Okay then, part two on my take on what it is required to make a great coach. You'll recall in part one we talked about Lau Tsu, those two quotes there. He's done lots of quotes, this ancient Chinese philosopher. That one I like down at the bottom there. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. We'll come back to that at the end of this little segment. We talked about some basic skills, essential skills for delivering training and teaching. And we also talked about the great coaching toolkit, what is required, those prerequisites for, but on fundamentals really, for good coaching. But really, what I want to talk about this time is my 7 pillars. The picture is the rock formation, the 7 pillars, not of wisdom in this case, of coaching. My take, that's actually in the Jordanian desert. Now, coaches are only successful to the extent that they can inspire, orientate, and enable their crew or athletes to understand and learn what they need to know at the right time, in the right order, swiftly and completely. So the measure of their success is not the reputation or kudos of the coach, but the quality of learning and understanding which results from their instruction. It's a different emphasis. It puts the student front and center of the process, not the coach. So it's not the cult of the coach, it's the skill of the learners that are interesting and front and center for me. Other people will say differently. This is what I say. So my 7 pillars. First one, a high level of subject matter competence. You don't have to be the last world authority on dragon boat, but you need to understand the fabric of the sport, the fabric of the basics of the technique. There is some variation. Doesn't need to be a high performance athlete or have been an Olympic level athlete, must understand how and think about how the sport is conducted and progressed and delivered at the front end. Must have a high level understanding of the sport, really, and be technically proficient in themselves. So that doesn't necessarily mean a world authority. Needs to understand in depth and therefore convey that to the paddlers, the students, the athletes. If the coach doesn't understand it in depth, there's no chance of that being passed on to the athletes or the recipients. They need or must be able to explain how to effectively and efficiently conduct the sport and propel, in this case, the dragon boat, or steer it, or be the drummer cox, whatever the skill set we are talking about. You can't really get around that high level of subject matter competence. There needs to be, number 2, mastery of instruction and evaluation techniques. This is understanding and applying the principles, methods, and techniques of instruction. People learn differently. They could be audio or auditory, they could be visually, they could be kinesthetic, they could be a mixture of the two. You could follow any other method of instruction or learning, but you need an understanding, a grasp that people learn differently. You need to know your own particular learning style as well, because what will happen, unless you're cognizant of it or aware of it, you may find that you tend to teach to your own preferred learning style. And clearly people learn differently. So an understanding of those methods and principles will help you to make sure you deliver your training and your coaching multi-level, multi-layer, different contexts. And when you come to assess people, you assess people using different methods. If they're purely a kinesthetic learner or mainly a kinesthetic learner, that's hands-on, people tend to learn differently, and you test everybody visually or in an auditory way, you're not necessarily going to get the best of them. So the courses I run, for example, I try to test people using different methods to capture as much as possible. Clearly, part of mastery of instruction evaluation is clear and concise and considerate language and speech. So communication skills, again, they need to understand, as we said, how different people learn and process information and take account of that. So somebody who is, I use the analogy of Star Trek. Remember the first version of Star Trek? Personality types. This is quite a generalization. Personality types could either be Captain Kirk, shoot from the hip, don't do detail. They could be Mr. Spock, ultra theorist and Captain Kirk would be the activist, if you look at the Honey and Mumford style of teaching. Then you've got the Scotty, got like the engineer, who's maybe the pragmatist, and then you've got the doctor, Dr. McCoy, Bones, who's the reflector. So 4 different personality types. I use those characters myself, but people are mixtures of each. You see what I mean? So they're different. They learn differently. They think differently. So you've got to try and adapt and overcome that particular issue. Different people learn and process information differently. And therefore, you need to coach and assess using those different variety of methods, or be cognizant of it and try and adapt your style to suit the paddler, not adapt your paddler to suit you. That's where we're going with that. Number 3, promoting and maintaining the desire to learn. I've borrowed this from the British Army. I think there's a lesson plan on this. Fantastic. Can't put it better myself, so I'll borrow it from them. It's incumbent upon the coach to think about their own motivation, what motivates them, and therefore what motivates their students or athletes, their attitude and approach. Okay, you can't have a massively positive mental attitude all the time, but you need to be aware of your attitude, how you're putting the information and the subject matter across. You need to have, as a coach, an inner drive. If you're going to try and motivate other people, you need to be motivated yourself. You cannot drive and motivate other people if you are demotivated. So that takes a bit of thought, how you're going to achieve that. You need to understand individual and collective needs. It's not just about saying we're going to the World Championships in 2021, therefore everyone do this. You've got to understand within your team of 22 people, it's a full-scale, full-size dragon boat, there are maybe different motivations and 22 individuals. You're going to try and brigade them into thinking the same way, blend them into a crew. You need to be aware that different people come at it from different directions, and you need to really be a master of all trades, okay, and a master of different approaches. Understanding the group's challenges and constraints. Now, when you're talking about maybe adaptive paddlers, breast cancer paddlers, they'll obviously have, or mostly have, upper body challenges as a result of maybe lymphedema, or maybe as a result of operations, etc., etc. So they need to take that into account. But then again, a good coach will understand they need to adapt and overcome these sort of challenges and constraints anyway. That's part of the process of coaching. You can't have one style and expect it to fit every athlete, every competitor, every team member. They need to be genuine. This is the coaches, and engaged and involved. You can't be remote. Now, you need to maybe keep a sensible, respectful distance and maintain the integrity of coaching and impartiality. That's different. You also need to be engaged and involved in the fabric of the team or the group you're coaching. You need to understand your athletes, and that way you can get the best from them and they can achieve their potential. They are front and center, remember. There's got to be a genuine desire to be involved. If it's just another coaching, another opportunity, whatever, to earn money or whatever you're doing, it's not really going to work as well. And also they need to be able to improvise, adapt, and overcome various issues. Adaptability, that's a key part to it. So that's number 3. I found this when I was looking for a picture of motivation. Actually, there's somebody on a hilltop somewhere being motivated, and I found this. Team, together everyone achieves more. You could actually use that acronym for all sorts of things. Together everyone adds muscle, whatever you want to do. I might use that somewhere at some point in the future. I like to use those sort of mnemonics. They're quite useful for me. Depends on whether it suits your method of instruction. Okay then, so 7 pillars, number 4, continual or ongoing creativeness and resourcefulness. What I mean by this is expect the unexpected. Now, every session, you're not going to reinvent the wheel or reinvent the paddle or reinvent the paddling technique every session, but building into your micro, meso, or macro cycles will be an element of rotation. You'll be returning to the same subjects. So you need to find a way of keeping that fresh, creating new and resourceful ways of delivering what is sometimes the same subject matter in a slightly different way, maybe to take up a slightly different learning style. But do expect the unexpected. Your plan may not come to fruition for a variety of reasons. People may not arrive for a variety of reasons at training. The weather might interpose, or all sorts of things might happen. You may not even be able to paddle at all and have a gym session or an activity session in your back pocket. That's a taken or given when it comes to training or running training sessions. Plan. Have a depth of planning. I would say 3 levels. Primary, alternate, contingency plan for your training sessions. Some people say planning emergency, having a 4th level, but 2 or 3 levels. Primary, alternate, contingency tends to cover most situations. Like I say, improvise and design novel teaching aids and situations to assist learning and retention of information. A lot of words there. Basically, be resourceful, be adaptive, be inventive. Keep your people interested, keep them engaged, they'll return. If it becomes jaded and a little bit boring, you might find they go off and do something else. So you need to be mindful, cognizant of that as well. Designing new technical drills and exercises. One thing I get asked frequently on coaching courses, we do a certain amount of technical drills, and people say to me, can you give me all your technical drills? I say no. I give people a basic skill, but the whole point about technical drills is not that one size fits all. You only have 5 technical drills or 1 technical drill in your toolbox. The whole point of it is to look at your athlete and devise something that suits their requirements. It'll probably be from a repertoire of existing drills, but you may need to also adapt those. Okay, that's so it's an adaptable, it's an adjustable spanner rather than a spanner, if you know what I mean, to use an earlier analogy. So designing new technical drills and exercises to suit the paddler, to suit your aims and objectives. Borrowing good techniques, not stealing. We don't steal techniques. What we do is, if something works, we borrow it, we acknowledge the inventor, and we adapt it to our requirements. That's very different. It's not theft, in my view. Okay.